Hey guys, and welcome to the art show with Simon. And this week we've got Ned as our special guest presenter on the show tonight. So, first of all, sorry we don't have Pete here tonight as our kind of a special guest. He has got some personal issues and not here for this week, but he's going to be here next week. So, yeah, if you kind of wanted to tune in and see what Pete had to say about your work or whatever was going on, then yeah, tune back in next week and we'll have that sorted.
Deal with me.
That's right. So this week we've got Ned, but we've got some pretty cool stuff to talk about actually. So it should be pretty fun. What we're going to do is we're going to just kind of go through and show some of the stuff that we've been doing. Ned's got a bit more stuff to show than I've got to show, so that's good. And it might not just be stuff from this week; it might be some stuff from that is kind of been kind of been doing. We're going to just do a little bit of talking about sort of day-to-day production concept artists, job, kind of doing that as a job and sort of what that entails and things. And obviously, Ned and his role at CW Studios is doing a lot of that all the time. So he's probably one of the best people around here to answer what that actually is.
We'll see.
And then we're going to do some critiques. And sort of last of all, probably we're going to get a demo from Ned. And that will be the kind of the stuff that we've got going on for the show tonight. So yeah, if you have any questions, please let us know, like always, in the chat. We've just some pretty cool news is now we're affiliate with Twitch. So basically, you can subscribe to the channel. We don't necessarily have any perks just yet because we're working on those. But we've got some really cool stuff that we're kind of thinking about doing in the offering. So potentially thinking about releasing some exclusive video content for you guys in the forms of tutorials and things, and also potentially having some mentorship programs and things like that through the kind of Twitch subscriber setup. And we're also thinking of like kind of getting some message board stuff kind of set up, which should be cool because then we can basically, if you want work critiqued, you can kind of post it up in the forums and things like that, so we can not have it kind of as messy as it is on Facebook, and that should help kind of get things a little bit more kind of sorted. So behind the scenes, we're working hard, trying to get the stuff done, trying to get everything a little bit better and smoother and easier for you guys to get something out of the show. So first of all, we'll just kind of move into, I guess, I'll show you guys some stuff that I've been working on. Then Ned can show some stuff, and then we'll kind of get into having a bit of a chat about things. So I guess with things I've been doing this week is just with the kind of digital painting class. We're looking at doing some interiors. And kind of, we were doing some of that last week and doing some more advanced stuff this week. So kind of having a look at some of that stuff. And I guess when you've got some stuff to show as well, you get a little bit of that kind of thing too.
Yeah, I got some class stuff as well, yeah.
Like, and sort of like some 3D paint overs and kind of, some of this sort of stuff. And we'll talk about that when we're talking about, what is being a concept artist and how do I do that as a job type of thing. So, yeah, so this here is like, basically some 3D paint overs. Started in SketchUp with this and literally just kind of like kit bashed a whole bunch of stuff that you can get off kind of the SketchUp warehouse, which is like an amazing resource for this type of thing.
It is.
Yeah, so good for saving time. And sort of built some of my own stuff. I've used quite a bit of SketchUp like over the years. So when you kind of keep bashing things in SketchUp, if you haven't used it much, that can be a little bit tricky because it can be hard to know how to kind of do things yourself, I guess. But yeah, just getting to know how to do those things. And then, yeah, basically this was the same office space, but just a different kind of camera angle. And what's cool is like I took this stuff from SketchUp into Keyshot. And got a render out, which was this, and it was probably literally in the space of 5 minutes. You could get something like this kind of happening, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah,
for painting over, like,
and
it's
being able
insane.
To change that camera angle whenever you need. Yeah, is one of the most powerful things you can do with this 3D stuff. Yeah,
that's right. So you can get, and the trick is, one of the things that I was saying to the guys in class is, like every now and then one of the things that you kind of get in terms of the questions being asked is like, am I cheating? Is this sort of like, not? But what I was explaining to the guys in the class is that part of it is that how you put this together in SketchUp is part of being an artist. How you think about your compositions is part of being an artist. How you think about, the shots that you're choosing is being an artist, right? Like all of those things you need those skills to be able to put all of this stuff together and put it in place.
Yeah.
To
absolutely.
create,
that's
a good piece from, right?
Yeah, that's probably something we can talk about later. But that idea of kind of cheating is not really valid especially when it comes to production concept art. It's there's no such thing. It's you're there to produce images and produce designs and solve problems, and it does not matter how you get there as long as you're not ripping off someone else's work. It's 100% fine. And so that's what the warehouse, for instance, is so good, because it's just all this stuff that you have available to you, which is there for that very reason, to allow you to flesh out a room like this really quickly without having to go through all the trouble of modeling a coffee table.
That's right. Yeah. And one of the things I was saying to the guys all the time is like, you are not going to reinvent an office chair. It's like an office chair is an office chair. So how about we just like don't draw office chairs?
Don't tell my design fundamentals class that though, because that's one of their projects
to make an office chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you get what everyone gets what I'm saying, right? Like So this stuff's great, and then we can use it as a paint over. So one of the challenges is from last week. Actually, I don't have the image here, but we did a line drawing, to value study and just painting up the line drawing.
Yep.
So part of this challenge was to get this 3D render to look like the thing that you hand did the previous week.
Yep.
And we can do that, right? So part of that process was showing the guys like, how you can do that and how you can start getting to look like a line drawing sketch, just to match the styles.
Yep.
And this is something we're going to talk about later, is that like a lot of doing this as a job is matching styles, and kind of getting things to look like it's part of the bigger project.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you need to learn all these little different techniques for how to achieve, that stuff.
Yep.
Which will make you far more employable if you can kind of do those things. So and then kind of we're designing around and kind of getting all these things done. So these are not quite finished yet, but this was some of the stuff that I was doing. So it was just kind of cool to see. Really cool to sort of show that process, how you can do things. I guess like one of the things here is like, when I did this in SketchUp, I deleted the floor accidentally, and I think I just did something else and couldn't really get it back easily. So there was some patio outside, and I dragged it inside. Yep. And I was like, so one of the things I'd do in the class was like change that to like floorboards or something, right? So you can see in here when we go this one here, we've got some nice kind of artist studio looking, floorboards and things like that.
Rage.
So it's just, so it's just, using all of those techniques to get what you want out of the image. So so there's some things that I've sort of been doing this week, and how about we sort of go through and show some of the stuff Ned's been doing. Do you want to show this stuff in here first, Ned, or you want to show this stuff first?
Yeah, let's do this,
and then we'll talk about some of the other stuff after.
Yeah, absolutely. So okay,
I'll let you drive.
Okay, I'll drive the mouse. Okay, so I brought along a bunch of we're right with that. Where's the pointer? There it is. I'm kind of have a personal project that I've been working on for a long time now. That is, I'm trying to figure out what the best way of opening this is. Which is actually this is part of it. It's kind of like an IP development project that I've been working on for a long time now. But I'm just starting at this point in time to kind of work it together into a bit of a graphic novel. Because ultimately I want to pitch this or produce this into some sort of actual product, and a graphic novel is an excellent way to sell kind of visuals and also story and dialogue and characters all at the same time in a nice little kind of compact package. And so I brought along, this is kind of like a little style frame I did to test things, and I brought along a couple of kind of like my process as well. So let's go to the finished page, this one, and this is one of the finished pages, which is again like the whole thing was kind of I just kind of jumped straight into it as a process. I wasn't really 100% sure what I was doing, so you can even see like between the first frame and the last frame on this page, the style kind of changes a bit. It starts out quite naive and stylized, I just realized there's a diagonal line that runs across that entire page. Must have hit the shift key. But yeah, it kind of starts out a little bit naive, and then the lighting also changes and it gets a little bit grittier towards the end. But I just kind of wanted to see if I could do it, and then I kind of knew that I'd always go back and redraw this stuff. But again, this is working with a bunch of designs and a bunch of characters and kind of a dialogue style that I've had in my head for a long time. And then just trying to get it down on the page as kind of a sequential thing. And I didn't really plan any of the dialogue. I didn't write a script because I've had these characters kind of sitting in my head for a long time talking to each other. And so I just tried to kind of get some of this stuff onto the page. And for me personally, this was a real kind of new thing because this is not the kind of style that I work in normally. Although in the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot more kind of drawing and graphical stuff like this. It sits really differently from my professional work. It's absolutely nothing like my professional work. And so I think for me, it was just, it was to see like, can I get this to work, and does it also work for the project itself? And then I've got a couple of just pages here as well, which I thought might be interesting, which is basically my process. And I think you can see how rough this is. It's pretty terrible. There's a lot of stuff on here probably that doesn't read to anyone else except for me, because I know what's going on here. But I think that's one thing I tell my students a lot as well, is that I think like this stuff is super important, because I don't care if no one else can read it, because I'm not intending, apart from streaming it live on the internet, I'm not intending on actually showing this to anyone else ever. And I very, very quickly move on to the next stage, which is, kind of like rough pencil work over the top, which starts to get a little bit more legible, obviously, if we get rid of the blue. And then, it's just one more pass of line and then some flat color underneath to get to the finish. And I think like this guy down here is kind of the ultimate kind of style that I'm looking to do the rest of the book in. Less so that first page I showed. I think that I'll have to redraw that. And because I kind of like the looseness of this, it's kind of quite European, I think. Not that I'm European, but anyway. So I mean, I thought I'd bring that along because I thought that would be, I know a few people have seen some of this stuff, but I thought that might be interesting to people because it's really very different from the kind of stuff that I do professionally, which is this stuff, which we can probably get to in just a sec. I was just trying to, the other thing I wanted to show, which I think is in Photoshop, is some of the shots that kind of came before the comic book. That's kind of small, isn't it? So this is like one of the first paintings I did for this I'm calling it Cosmos, which is kind of a working title, which is one of the first frames I painted for this entire idea. And so you can see this is the same character, same car, same world, but then kind of I had to go through that process of redesigning these things, or at least re-envisioning these things in a style that fit the graphic novel, which was kind of interesting because it allowed me to go out and like explore because I'm not really a comic book guy. I never read comic books really, as this is probably like something I shouldn't admit, but I never really read comic books. I wasn't really into them. I just read the free ones I got in like show bags at the show, and then kind of like going out and so exploring kind of comic book style was like a real sorry, my watch just cool. I got 10,000 steps by sitting down. Cool. What was I saying? I've lost my train of thought. Comic books. That's right. Going out and like researching comic book artists and kind of like actually discovering like an entire world that I wasn't really aware of, that I kind of knew from like from you and from Tim and from Pete, right? So I know all these people that are like super into comics, and I never really got into them when I was a kid, and so that was really fun for me, and actually like opened up an entire new world of like storytelling as well, because there's a real art to it. And actually like Tim, for instance, was super helpful in that because he knows a bunch of really handy tips for like building stories for comics and stuff like that. So I've kind of picked his brain a bit for this stuff as well. But it's like, because I kind of tackled these originally with the workflow that I use professionally, which is kind of this not photoreal, but kind of a really hyper realistic thing, and even like stuff like this, which is mostly 3D, and then some like photo bashing for the ground plate and stuff like that. And that was my original intention, was like, I'll just do a bunch of really flashy images and then I'll send it off to some producer and they'll give me large amounts of money and I'll just go and make a movie or something.
It's the dream, Ned.
It's the dream. The dream's still there. But then I it was kind of like just like hanging around people like Tim and Pete who have both published comic books in their own right, and going, that's like such a better way to get the entire package out there, because all I can do with this is send it off and say, hey, look how cool this looks. But if you have some sort of sequential storytelling ability like a graphic novel or a comic book gives you, you can kind of sell the entire package and kind of send this off and say, this is what I really want it to look like, but you can send off like a page of a graphic novel and sell the stylized version of that story as well. So I mean, that's not something I've been working on like as of yesterday, but it's like, this is my current kind of extracurricular activity, is getting this stuff all together, and hopefully one day having a decent sized little sequence of story that I can do something with.
Cool.
And
so it's interesting to see the progression and seeing like some of the stylized stuff that you've been doing and stuff. So, and do you feel, how do you feel that, because obviously with not doing heaps of the comic stuff, like do you have any tips for people to how to like get a bit more comfortable with doing that? Like,
oh man,
just testing things.
I don't think I'd call any of it tips, because I have zero idea of what I'm doing.
That's what I kind of think is interesting, right? Because you're kind of doing it on the fly.
But I think the thing with the personal project as well is to just do it, because for me there's no consequence if it all goes wrong. It doesn't, like, I might be a bit sad for a little while, but it's, there's no real consequence to doing this stuff. I can experiment. I taught myself, this is one of the images I use to teach myself 3D Coat. So at the very least, I learned how to model things in 3D Coat very poorly. And, because it's super rough, but then I kind of used the other skills that I had to make up for the roughness to turn it into an image that I could actually use. And then, but and with the graphic novel stuff too, it was just a matter of, I read some enough graphic novels to kind of, when I was doing research, to kind of, I guess, assume that I sort of knew where I wanted to go. But I think my kind of philosophy with that stuff is to kind of just do it and see what happens, because if you don't do it, nothing will happen. If you do something, even if it goes terribly wrong, you can just put out the fire, and you're on the other side of that issue with either, something you can try again, or something you definitely never try again because it didn't work. So I think for me it was just that kind of like journey of discovery has been really, really good. And as you can see with the graphic stuff, it's still going. And I'm sure if I was to go home now and just finish that book in the next 3 days, it would be completely different at the end in terms of style and like storytelling and everything. But that would be a good thing. And I could sit here for years and years and years trying to plan the whole thing out perfectly, but if I just do it, then I'll have something. And then cool. You can use that and kind of go forward with that. A bit of a
awesome
question over there.
So a question about how you would actually eventually pitch your graphic novel. Would you have to find a producer, or do you start a Kickstarter for your graphic novel? How do you make your own IP into a real thing? So that's a pretty cool question.
That's a very good question. It's
a long and windy.
It's a long. There's a lot of answers. The answer that I would give from my own personal kind of experience is, through my job, I've been lucky enough to kind of meet various producers and directors, and so I actually have a few people who I've worked with in the past who I have pitched this to in this kind of hyper-realistic state, and they've been interested in the visuals, but they wanted story, and that was one of the kind of the things that kicked me up the butt and was the impetus for me to start figuring out, because I originally sat down and tried to write a script and then realized that I'm not a script writer and that wasn't going to work. And so I know that's like a really kind of privileged answer to say like, oh, I know a few people that I can give this to. But I think like that's, even if you are kind of like coming up from, from a school perspective, or, just getting into the industry, you'll meet people who will be interested in what you're doing, I think. And you just show your work. You show your work wherever you can, and someone will bite if they like it. And I think like Kickstarter is an awesome route now too. I was never really interested in that because it scares the hell out of me a little bit, because I'm not sure if I'm ready to put this project out there and just say, hey guys, how much do you think this is worth? Or even like, I don't want to put a number on it because I just don't know. So for me, I'm kind of like relying on the people that I have met through my job a little bit, and so that's probably where I'll go. But I think like these days it's really a matter of, you just put it out wherever you can, whether that's Kickstarter or Indiegogo, or if you have like an Instagram account or a Twitter account, you just whack it out on there. And again, if it's good and someone's interested in it, people will bite and say like, hey, what is that? And
I think with guys starting out as well, like one of the things you'll find is you might do something at the start and you're really passionate about it, you want it to get it out there, but it's probably not at the level that it needs to be when you've been a professional for like 10 years or something, right? So what will happen is you will start putting it out there and you'll get feedback. You know, people will give you feedback, and that will be one of the big things that will really help mold the whatever project it is, or mold you as an artist as well, right?
Yeah.
And so just listen to the feedback and, you know, try and keep improving things as you're going along. And eventually those goals will become reality. You know, the more you kind of like putting it out there, the more you're listening to people, you know, doing all these things, then, you know, you might try and win one Kickstarter and then do another one, and, you know, like all these things kind of stack up.
Yeah, getting feedback is it's the most useful thing. I don't think I've ever had feedback from another artist that has not been useful in some way. It, even if it's not the way that they intended it, it's always there because it gives you someone else's perspective, because it's something you wouldn't necessarily think about.
So it's some definitely some cool questions, and I know like a lot of students want to kind of do their own projects, and I think it's a really awesome thing to do. But it definitely does take time. It takes a lot of time. And
I think
practice and
just like reading the last line of that question again of like how do you turn your IP into a real thing? I think don't underestimate how small a real thing can be to be a real thing. It doesn't have to be a feature-length film. It can be a 10-second, you know, play blast of some like ship flying past the screen. Like, you know, you could put this Photoshop file into After Effects and just animate the clouds moving across it, and put a soundtrack on the other side of it, and that's a thing, right? You know, you could print it out as a massive poster and just go stick it up somewhere. That's a thing. Like, it's getting your work out there is, I think turning an IP, it becomes a real thing as soon as you actually just produce any sort of artwork. Because until then, it's just an idea and it's not worth anything. But as soon as you put it down as a painting or as a 3D model or as a, you know, bit of music or as even just like a bit of like written dialogue or whatever, then it's a thing. And I think that's the easiest way, and then you just go forward from there. And if it's something that's your idea that you care about, you'll want presumably to keep kind of pushing it and getting better and getting better and getting better. So it's really cool. Should we show, do you want to show some Moonsinger stuff, Ned? I'll let you drive on that. So something else we got for you guys today is at CDW we've been working on some IP stuff. So we've got a bit of sort of secret stuff that we're gonna, over the weeks, we're hoping to show you guys a bit more and more of this type of thing, right? Just to so you can see kind of what a whole bunch of us have been kind of working on here. This is probably, I guess, going to lead into our topic of, you know, like what the concept art job is all about. So what we kind of want to show was like sort of how much process there is involved with this stuff, how much things can kind of change and develop over time. And so Ned's got a whole bunch of, this is all Ned's work here. It's not all my work.
Not all
some of it's my work,
but
this one is. So we've got heaps and heaps of stuff we could show. We've kind of picked just a little bit of a slice.
Tiny snippet of stuff.
With a little bit of progression running through it too. So hopefully you'll start to see some ideas that were thrown out and then some ideas that kind of stuck on and made it all the way through. But without going into too much detail about the actual story behind the backstory, which we probably want to sit on for a little bit longer. We've got essentially a world, and we have a character and a protagonist and a bit of a story arc that we're working with here. And we needed kind of a place for this story to take place. And so most of my professional work has been doing environmental designs and stuff like that. So this was something that was kind of right up my alley. And we started out with this idea of having we had like a 3-minute or so sequence of things that were happening, and like I said, we needed somewhere to put it, and so we knew it was going to be kind of this fantasy world. We knew it was kind of medieval. We had a few different ideas as to what it could be, and we did some research and some brainstorming, and kind of came up with this idea of following through with, I guess, kind of like Tudor Old English kind of architecture mixed in with some weird stuff. And we kind of this was like, I can't remember if this was one of the first images I did, but it was definitely, this was probably up there in the first week of one of the first things I did. And I think especially for the students watching, the first thing I would point out is look at how rough this is. Again, don't be afraid of making things that are messy. It's just like it's Photoshop, but I just did it as if it was like a 0.5 fine liner kind of drawing, and then I just whacked some gray behind it to punch out some of the details that weren't reading. But it was really, this was just like a stream of consciousness kind of thing, of just like thinking about what we were doing and how that sat in my head, and then just trying to kind of break that out into a city scene. We knew we needed a castle, we knew we needed a city, and so we just kind of went from there. And this is where that ended up. And then I think we've got a bunch of, there were a bunch of them, but we did like small variations, right? Where, and I mean, this shape is one that did actually kind of hang on through the entire development process. You'll probably see the shape of the castle popping up again and again, and that was just kind of dumb luck. Doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you have to really force more and more ideas through, but this was something that really kind of spoke to me, and then I guess I was kind of lucky enough to be allowed to kind of art direct a little bit of it, so I kind of hung on to that idea. But yeah, so we've got some of these may pop up in just completely random orders because I don't know. Right, and so this was like I think this may have even happened before the drawings.
It was before that, right?
Yeah, this was like maybe one of the first paintings we did. And again, this was, it just kind of stream of consciousness, like real messy photos smashed on top of photos with a bit of paint, just to get some mood and some kind of ideas like that. It's there are some things I like about this painting, but there are a lot of things I don't like about this painting now, that we kind of managed to weevil out through, like, through all of the guys here kind of working on this stuff. We just kind of, you iron out the creases and things like that. Guess let's just see what pops up next, and we can kind of okay, so some more kind of early line stuff again, just still kind of playing with shapes. And like I said before, we had this idea of kind of old English Tudor stuff.
So we had a bunch of references at the start, right, that we were kind of working from, and then Neb was kind of working quite heavily into like sort of trying to take them and develop a bit of a style on top of that. And we had some guys that were kind of like doing more kind of like photo real kind of versions, and there was all sorts of different stuff kind of going on all at the same time, just bashing out ideas.
Exactly.
Nothing was really set in stone or anything. No. It was just come up with whatever you think was cool.
At that point in time, we didn't really have a production pipeline. We kind of knew how we might go about making a finished product, but we weren't like 100% sure. So there weren't really any barriers on style or finish or fidelity, because we knew that, okay, if we like these shapes but we want to do it photo real, we can always turn around and figure out a way to do that in production. But it's like this is like the most fun part of any project, is this kind of initial design blast where you can just do pretty much anything, again, without too much consequence, but at the same time you have to work quickly because you don't want to spend too much time kind of faffing about with ideas that don't go anywhere in the end. So there's a bunch of stuff in here that I'd just even like forgotten that I'd done. And right, we have, hang on, can we find the other version of that? Like this one. Cool. Okay. So this is skipping forward a bit, but this is to a point where we'd started to make some rough models based off of sketches and some design drawings that we'd done in terms of the architecture, and just using them to start fleshing out physical spaces. I think we probably had like a little bit of a storyboard at this stage too, didn't we? So we kind of knew what was happening in terms of a space, and so it was a matter of looking at a script and looking at a storyboard and saying, okay, this is the thing that needs to happen. How do we build an environment around that to allow the character to kind of move through this environment? So you can see that this is very similar to what you were showing with the class demo, right? It's a 3D model with a couple of Photoshop filters and a bunch of line drawing over the top, just to turn it into something that looks a little bit more akin to the other design drawings we were doing at this stage, without kind of, I guess, getting bogged down in the 3D detail, because it's so easy when you work in 3D to get stuck into the details and get, not change anything, because you don't want to break the 3D-ness of it.
Yeah, even when you're painting in color and stuff, right? Like sometimes it's hard just to not get married to things.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you just if you take a really nice 3D render, even a gray one like this, and just immediately kind of destroy it to a point and just say, okay, we're not going to worry too much about it, we're just going to use the lines to help guide various ideas, and you can see like again some more like really quick drawing and texture work over the top of very basic 3D little character scale stuff in there. And again, a lot of this stuff is just informing various visual choices, various camera angles. You can see this is some 3D that's just had an earlier production painting just like smashed into the background just to provide some context, and it's all very much, you know, loose and breezy. But I mean, again, this is kind of like in terms of like the topic of, you know, what do you do as a concept artist? This is 90% of the job. This is kind of, you know, just servicing various problems that need to be solved, such as where do we put the camera for this shot, where do we put the camera for that shot, and then producing images that solve those problems, that answer those questions. All right, so this is the one I was actually looking for. So this was again an initial kind of design sketch done over the top of some very early 3D. None of this 3D is really getting used anymore, like it's all kind of been thrown out, I think, or rebuilt and stuff like that. But just kind of again in terms of like similar to the office space that you were talking about before for the class, is that, you know, it's a courtyard. There's only so much you can do with the courtyard, and in terms of, like, you know, pot plants and chairs and, you know, flower planters and all that kind of stuff. It's a matter of just kind of dressing things out to work for the context in which they're used, and then producing an image that is, you know, as quick as possible, answering all the questions that needed to be answered at that time. And so obviously at this time we were not dealing with lighting, we were not dealing with texture, we weren't dealing with color. We were purely dealing with where can we put things to make them look real and interesting, but also allow acting to happen in the scene. And then if I can manage to find my way back to the same one, I think it was that one. Right. You can see something that happened. Might actually be interesting just to look at the dates on these.
Yeah.
Which one was it? That one?
Yeah, I think so.
So that's 2703. So that's the 27th of March. I know my dates. And this one is, you know, it's a week later.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not a huge, I was kind of hoping just for the story's sake there'd be a massive gap between those two, but there's not. You know, it's later on, but again, this was done for a different purpose. This was once we had a bit more of a design direction. We knew that at some point we're going to have to texture these buildings and light them and, you know, figure out all that kind of stuff. And so this is the first image there was done by Nathan. This second one was finished off by me over the top of Nathan's work, which is another thing you have to get used to if you're working as a concept artist in a studio, is like a bunch of people coming in and changing things.
Yeah.
But basically this was done in service of what could the textures look like, how would we light this stuff. You'll notice there's a bunch of gold around, which is a bit of a story point that we're hanging on at the moment. But again, it's a different image with a completely different purpose to the first one, but reusing things, you know, and just again only answering, you know, maybe 10 of the 300 questions that we had at that point, just so that whoever's working on this next can take this information that they get from this image and move forward to kind of solve the next 10 questions and the next 10 questions and stuff like that. So yeah, it's like you can see like hopefully a massive range of different kind of uses for a lot of this stuff. Just click through.
So we do have one question.
Okay.
I think it's Loy is trying to get some answers out of us, but we might not be able to answer some of these questions. But basically, you know, the question is, are we planning to pitch Moonsing as an animated TV series to a company, or is this only a small brief project you guys are working on together? If it is only a small project, do you guys eventually want to pitch it to someone? So this is certainly by no means a small project. It's not a small project. This is very large, and there's been a lot of work done. So the stuff you're seeing here is probably like, I don't know, like 1% of the work. Like it's not even, it's just, this is just one area, one section of the overall kind of story that we're working on. So yeah, obviously don't want to say too much about, you know, sort of what we're pitching, where we're pitching it to, and all that sort of stuff. But needless to say, it's a big project that we're working on. It's
going to be good.
Yeah, that we're very excited about. And, you know, we just kind of wanted to show you guys, share with you kind of, not necessarily what the end product is, but the process, you know, of these things, and kind of a lot of times you don't get to see the day-to-day kind of inner workings of how this stuff gets to, you know, where it gets to.
Yeah.
So over the next couple of weeks and months, we're going to release a bit more stuff on Twitch and show you guys some things, and probably in a little bit of time we'll start showing you guys some 3D stuff as to where this has kind of ended up, which we all know what it is, and it's pretty amazing. So we'll show you some of that. We got a little bit of 3D stuff in here, so yeah, we'll keep scrolling.
I've been clicking on these in the wrong order, so I don't even know where we're up to anymore.
That's all right. So this was you can explain it.
Thanks. So I mean, this is some of the more kind of, I don't want to, like, it's not pedestrian, but this is kind of some of the more targeted stuff that is directly at, okay, so if someone is going to build one of these buildings in 3D, here is an image that provides them with a bunch of detail that they can use. So it's just obviously just an orthographic elevation. I don't know if this particular one had turnarounds as well, but this was kind of something we could give to 3D artists and say, okay, at this early stage, we need you to start building some things so we can use them for layout and we can use them to design back over the top of. And another iteration here as well. I'm still playing with design shapes, but basically, a relatively simple image that is not trying to create a scene. It's not trying to create 3D space or anything like that, where there's no characters in there. But it has information in there that a 3D artist can then go in and interpret and turn into something in 3D, which can then in turn be handed back to a concept artist who can then draw over the top, paint over the top, sometimes even just draw arrows and write notes next to and say change this, change that. Certainly from like an art direction standpoint, that was a lot of the stuff that I was doing, was literally just kind of the arrows pointing to things and saying, hey, fix this, fix that. And then similar kind of things here again with different styles too. Trying to keep similar. We were still developing shapes at this stage, so there wasn't as much of a need to keep the styles between artists exactly the same. Something that we're kind of, like, a lot of the stuff we're doing now that we have kind of solidified a lot of that style is making sure that, and again, this is like part of my job, is making sure that all the artists on the team are kind of working towards the same ultimate goal, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, I think, as a concept artist, is walking into a studio and having to match style.
I think it's the scariest thing.
It's the worst thing about the job.
Day one of a new job when you get into a studio is like,
it's
oh
terrifying.
shit.
Absolutely, yeah. Oh, we can swear.
How do I do
this?
Swear.
Great, excellent. And so so this is that we have heaps of images like this of like windows and doors and all that boring stuff. But anything that needs to be built at some stage needs to be presented in a visual manner to the artist who is going to build it, with enough information for them to hopefully not have to ask too many questions and be like, oh, what's this? What's that? What's this? I don't know. You just have to pick one.
Yeah, I'm thinking, it'd be cool if we had a bit more. So let's show some of. Do we have some more? What's that? No. I'm just going to go here quickly.
There's too much stuff.
Yeah. Here we go. So I guess these are kind of cool to show, just in terms of like handing things off to a modeler and where things kind of head in a direction. So I guess what we kind of wanted to show here was we started handing some of this stuff off to the 3D guys, and they were kind of working on some of this stuff, and there's elements that are kind of like really cool, and there's more here. There's like, I'm not showing all the stuff that we've got. There's heaps of stuff, but yeah, and there's some elements that are pretty cool, and sometimes what happens is like the like when you hand this stuff off to 3D guys, it's open to interpretation. They're kind of interpreting different things, and sometimes they don't interpret things the way you would think that you would interpret stuff. So you have to then give direction from there, right? And that's one of the big parts of the kind of concept artist role is doing that stuff. So, and I guess one of the things that we started getting some buildings made up, and whilst in these models there is some stuff that's really important for the project, but there's also some areas where we're kind of like, the buildings are not really heading down the direction that we kind of wanted them to go exactly, right? So then now I don't know, where is all this stuff? So I think this one, that one. So then Ned started doing some drawings of some more buildings here. Which, do you want to talk through these, Ned?
Yeah. So I mean, these were kind of like second or third pass designs, and they were kept relatively loose because we have the advantage here of working with a fairly small team, most of whom are kind of sitting next to each other, so you can often save a little bit of time by handing off a drawing when it's a little bit looser, and then kind of following that up with a little 2-minute spiel or brief to the 3D artist. But basically, just kind of taking all the stuff from the models that was working, and then just either reiterating it, emphasizing it, and then also just kind of fixing up and adding in things that we thought needed to be changed in order to push the buildings in the direction that we wanted. And I think like the really important thing to stress with this kind of process is it's normal. It's 100% normal in the way that these things go, because when you first start the project out, you have an idea in your head, and you try and visualize that as much as possible, and then you see it in 3D, or you see it in a more finished version, and you go, oh, hang on a sec, maybe my idea wasn't working. Maybe it was working in my head a little bit different to how it's going to work in real life, or I needed to change this. It's like, it's not. I guess like the thing I'm trying to say is it's not like a necessarily that we gave designs off and then they came back and they were wrong. It was just we gave designs off and they came back as they were, and we went, okay, hang on a sec, is this going to serve the overall story? Is this going to serve the product? Because again, like with concept art, that's the goal. That's the end goal. It's got nothing to do with the drawing itself. It's got nothing to do with how the modeler interprets the drawing. It's about whether or not the idea, as it stands at that point in time, is what the story needs or what the product needs. And if it isn't, as a concept artist, again, your job is to like take that idea back in, kind of twist it around, stretch it out, add new things, and then kind of give it back to the production artist, and then they kind of realize that final thing. And again, like these buildings might come back again, and we'll do another round of changes if we have to. And I mean that's the entire creative process in a nutshell. And then as a concept artist, again, it's your job to just be on that firing line and be like, okay, that's how it looks now. Is that is that what we want? Is that what we need? And as an art director, you look at it and go, okay, is that all working? And is this going to serve the story? And you compare it to the script, and you compare it to the storyboards, and make sure it's going to work. And if not, you make changes, send it back. And yeah, so I mean that's kind of like, these again, like I said, are like probably second or third round drawings of buildings which are currently in production now. We'll get them back. We'll probably see a bunch of stuff in there that like these drawings are ones that I did. I'll probably get them back and go, oh crap, that's either someone misinterpreted something I drew, or an idea I had that looked great in the drawing doesn't work in 3D, or any different, there's 100 different things that could possibly go wrong, but then you look at it and you change it and then you go again, until you get to a point where you can kind of go, okay, that's going to do it. Or sometimes, as in production, is you do it until you run out of time or you run out of money. And so we're kind of lucky at the moment where we've got a bit of flexibility with that, I hope. And so we're kind of like, it's been a really fun process for me, at least, kind of exploring this stuff, and so especially from like an architectural standpoint, because that's kind of like one of my main passions is doing that kind of stuff. So for me, it's been really cool. I can't speak to everyone else on the team, but no one's coached me yet.
I think like certainly what we wanted to show you guys was just the process, so you can see how things have kind of evolved, and probably over like a 6-month period or whatever, where started off with just some really cool but fun and loose kind of line drawings, and then it's sort of moved into the world of 3D, and then it's kind of got paint overs from there, and like all the while it's kind of evolving, and then it's really moved into like kind of production 3D, and then it's still evolving from there. And like this stuff is sort of, I think sometimes what people starting out think is like you just do one thing and then like that's it, it's done. Like, but here you can see here we're just designing buildings, right? It's like this whole kind of process, but and you can see what happens as it goes along. The kind of like designs sort of mature, I think, over time. Like they just start getting better and cooler, and all that kind of stuff as it goes along. certainly, like, if you're working in a job, if you have good art directors, then that's what will happen, is that you'll kind of get that process Ned was talking about, where you kind of like, you'll send stuff off and then you'll get it back and you'll be like, here's these changes I got to make. And at the start, you'll be like, oh, I've got to make changes. Oh, it must have been something wrong.
Yeah.
But then you'll start saying like, if you've got a good art director, you'll start seeing that, oh, if I change this stuff, it's going to be like better and stuff.
Yeah.
I know when like Brian Wanya was here, he was saying that in their team at id Software is they kind of call it plussing.
Yep.
And they basically like have various people working on these things, and they're not competing against stuff, they're just trying to plus the designs as they go along.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. So that's kind of what we wanted to show you guys today, was some of that process and how these things can evolve and stuff like that. And I guess that can kind of lead into our topic, which we've kind of probably spoken about.
Done already.
Doing this.
Yeah.
It's just the idea of being a concept artist as your kind of day-to-day job, and sort of what that involves. So if any of you guys have any questions about that you would like answered about that kind of stuff, certainly just fire them away, and we can try and help. But do you have any like kind of little notes about just the types of things you'd like to kind of just talk about, or just emphasize?
Well, I mean, certainly my experience with this stuff has been in environmental design, and then also in kind of pitch illustration as well, which is a massive amount of my professional work has been pitch illustration, mostly for kind of like TV and film projects. That's kind of a different beast as well, because the finished product is, again, it's something that needs to serve a project as a whole. Like, you're not creating a final product in any way, shape or form, but the process is a little bit different because you're concentrating on different things. So for instance, with something like this where we have like really like accurate texture detail, really accurate lighting, kind of colors and all that kind of stuff is really important. If I'm painting a pitch frame for a film or a TV show, I'm much more concerned with just the overall emotion. I'm not overly concerned with some design aspects. Like if there's a building off to the left and you have a brief of, this is set in, current New York or whatever, in the film, they might have had a specific idea for a very specific building, but as for a pitch frame for an illustration, you just go, okay, well, it's just building. Yeah.
And
it's not important because, maybe this frame it's about the character doing something else. And so then it becomes a much more kind of like emotional image production, as opposed to something like this, which is really pragmatic, where you're like, okay, well, the modeler needs to see this, this, and this. A lot of my professional work is in dealing with pitch is a matter of like selling a mood or selling an emotion, because it's the kind of image that someone's going to use to pitch the entire project. And so someone needs to be able to look at it and kind of get the blurry-eyed vision of what things are going to look like. And that's, there's a lot of similarities, but there's also differences. So I think if anyone has questions about that kind of stuff specifically as well, that's something I'm probably, if I'm qualified to talk about anything, it might be that.
And I think like one of the biggest things that you're doing when you're working on, when you're working as a concept artist is probably like, let's see if we can, this. This is the type of stuff that you're doing a lot of, which is kind of like, this informs so much of what things look like. Like this stuff is, like Ned's saying about the pitch frames, but kind of like that's like a teeny tiny part of the process, right? And then the bulk of it is kind of like, okay, what do those buildings look like, and what does what do the flower pots look like, and what do the doors look like, and the windows look like, and that's all the stuff that's actually like kind of, that's where the work is, right?
Exactly.
So you've got to be really good at, I think like, being good at, drawing and just doing line drawings and being comfortable with that, whether you're using, the all the little shortcuts in Photoshop that makes things look like a line or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like we said at the start, it's kind of like, however you get there is fine, but just being comfortable with doing those things.
Yeah.
And I think like, just being comfortable with like designing things out, coming up with different ideas for different options and things like that is really valuable. You can do that comfortably and quickly.
That's it. Because there's plenty of people I know that if they were given the brief to do a sheet of designs for a building like this, they would probably very roughly, and I think actually Cody may have done these over the top of some rough models, but there's plenty of concept artists out there now that would, go into a 3D program, very roughly model out the silhouette.
Yeah.
That gives them their perspective, it gives them their volume, and then the first thing they do, like with your class demo, is they take it into Photoshop, they apply a line filter to it, or they render it out with a toon filter, and then they just start drawing over the top. And so they're modeling, an entire building with the express purpose of then not ever using that model. But the good thing about that workflow is that these days, if for instance you have a design drawing that has a model that does actually fit under it really nicely, you can send that off into production and someone else can use it, even if it's just as a base, to get the proportions right. So stuff like this, you could either draw it by hand. Like my personal approach to this would be to draw it by hand because I'm not a particularly good 3D modeler. But someone who is a much quicker modeler than me could quite easily do as an effective job, probably just as quickly if they just very quickly jump into Maya or whatever and just model something up, just like bash it out and then draw back over the top. End of the day, like at lunch when we're both handing in our work, it's going to look exactly the same. And the person who can do the 3D modeling is probably also going to have a little bit of an edge on someone like me, because they'll have like an actual building that they can send off to production if the design gets approved.
Do you think, is it in your experience, is it do you think that's advantageous for people to get hired?
Yeah, I think if you can show, I think the most important thing is to be good at something, be really good at something. But then if you can show that you have transferable skills in another area, or like an area next to your area of expertise, so if you're a concept artist and you can do a little bit of modeling, again, what that does is it puts you in a spot where you can insert yourself into the pipeline of a production studio, but you can also kind of reach to the next level. And when you're in a pipeline, the people you're dealing with are the people below and above you. And so if you can kind of do anything that helps them do their job easier, you become a much more valuable employee. And then I think also these days, just with the trend of like what things need to look like, everything, there's a lot of photorealistic stuff going on. 3D modeling is becoming it is a necessary tool. If someone says, we want like a look frame or a pitch frame of an entire city, with lights and it's on fire and there's stuff blowing up, and you could sit there and paint that, but if you can model it out very quickly and then paint over the top, you can do it in half the time, and then you can take the afternoon off, whatever. It's one of those things. It's the final. I think that the skill comes in recognizing what is needed to solve the problem, and then the hard work comes in learning whatever tool you want to realize that visual solution as quickly as possible. And if you're a little bit slower here but faster there, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. Like I've said in all my classes, you can be making this stuff out of paper mache, but if you can do it quicker than the next guy and just as well, then that's you done. That's the job. So
yeah, cool. So we've got a few questions. So matching styles on a project. Do you have any advice for 2D artists on matching specific styles on a project? How do you make sure that you and everyone else is able to make their work look consistent? In your own work experience, did you have to do studies in your own time to get some practice, or did you have to use a specific process to get that style used on the project?
That's a really good question. I think the first thing I would say is that generally hopefully you're not going to have to push your style too far, because if you're aiming for a certain area of the industry, if you want to work for Blizzard, you'd probably, and you want to work on Overwatch or whatever, you're probably not going to end up working on something that requires you to, do something completely different in your portfolio. If you have a portfolio full of stuff that is aimed at a specific style, someone that is working on something completely different is probably not going to come out of the darkness and hire you straight away, right? Not because your work might not be good enough, but because someone who's hiring for Call of Duty is not going to look for a bunch of kind of Overwatch looking portfolios. And so from that, I would say you don't worry about it too much in that regard. But I think doing little studies and just kind of the best practice is just being thrown in the deep end and having to do it, which I've found is very good motivation for that kind of stuff. Because really, if you have good fundamental skills and a good eye for design and like that kind of thing, it's generally something where you can look at what you would normally draw and look at what they need and go, okay, well, everything is longer or everything is taller or everything is fatter or whatever. And then you can kind of adjust in that way, because ultimately style just comes down to, proportion of shapes and arrangements, and then, maybe color palettes and stuff like that. So I think there's an amount of the kind of skill set and the kind of mental process it takes to just draw anything and design anything is the same process it takes to change your style. It's just you have to make a concerted effort to go, okay, I'm going to draw things this way from now on. But it's not an easy process, but I think that is kind of what I would say is that you in a professional context, you're not going to be pushed too far, hopefully. Like I've had jobs where people have approached me for stuff where I've just had to say, look, this is not going to be something that I'm going to do justice to, so I'm probably not the person to tackle this. I've had other jobs where I've done something and they've gone, what the hell is this? And I've gone, well, I'm sorry, but I did my best, and then you get moved on to something else. And again, like that's not the end of the world either. So I think it's not a big like scary thing necessarily, but it's yeah, I think I answered the question.
I know. I think that Loy is asking this question because of a project that they are working on at the moment. But I think potentially one of the problems with what Loy's talking about with a group of people coming together and working on the same style is that they the said group of people may not have the style that they're working on. They're basically all doing their own stuff and trying to match that together. And that's a bit of a different problem, right?
Yes, it is.
And it's something we're going to talk about in class coming up. So Loy, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because there's some other factors going on. So where basically, if everyone's sort of working on their own thing, it's very hard to then all match a particular style. Right?
If I had to comment on that externally, and I do, from someone who I'm not sure what you're working on, but I would say that the thing you want to do to solve that problem, if it's becoming a problem, is actually figure out what, instead of saying like we've got 4 people with different styles, what do we do? Jump over the 4 people and go, what's the thing that needs to come out the other end? And then figure out what those 4 people or 5, however many people there are, can do to get there, right? Because there's going to be some common threads somewhere that you can find, but if you don't know where you're aiming, you can't start to solve the problem, because you'll just be changing your style for the sake of changing your style, and you'll get 3 people who can draw one thing, but then if that one thing is not the thing you need to draw, then you haven't solved the problem. You've just discovered you can all draw something in the same way. So yeah, that would be my advice.
So creating a bit of a style guide at the start, right?
Exactly. Find an end goal. You need to have an end goal for this stuff.
Yep, but there's always learning that the hard way, though.
Yes. Sometimes it is just hard.
And we've got another question. Often not sure how far to render something for concept. Is that something that comes with experience, or is it something we learn to do based on a brief? Like Ned said, what they need the most be the emotion. So yeah, I guess the question is, how far do you render things?
What's finished?
I
mean, the answer to that is, how long is a piece of string? It depends what it's for. Again, for for instance, with what we were looking at there, like this is something that you could give to a modeler and they would be able to make something, but there would be so many questions that would arise from this particular image that's on screen now, that you would spend so much time changing things, fixing things, moving things around, that this is not something you would give to go into production. But this is something that you could read a script, do this painting, and then go, does this gel with my idea of what the story is? And then you could give this painting to another designer, or you could take it back into design and say, okay, now that we have this image, we have this mood, we've got this kind of environment, can someone please design this building so it can be built? And so in terms of knowing how far you need to go with something like a building schematic, essentially, there is some experience there, and I think like working under 3D modelers and other people in production, you start to learn kind of, okay, well, when do I stop? But I think most modelers would probably tell you that the thing they want is clear form. And so for me personally, the quickest way to draw to visualize clear form is to draw. I don't need color, I don't need light, I can just do it with line. Maybe some very, very basic flat tone, maybe some basic cast shadows if there's a particularly tricky form in there somewhere. But for me, drawing is the quickest way to explain that form. But I guess the real skill comes in knowing the question that is going to be asked by a 3D modeler, and that's something that different modelers have different amounts of kind of ability to interpret or willingness to interpret. Some 3D modelers like very much to just be given a floor plan and a schematic and measurements of everything, and they'll just sit there and they'll replicate it to the millimeter and it'll be perfect and amazing. Other 3D modelers will have maybe a little bit more of a design bone in their body, and they'll be like, oh, just give me something that gets me started and I'll finish it off. And I mean, that kind of goes to what you're talking about with Brian's like the plussing idea at id, is they have 3D designers there who are happy to take on something that maybe is a little bit ambiguous in one area, or maybe just the design's a bit off or whatever, and just go, oh well, I thought we could do this, is this okay? Ultimately it becomes the job of the art director or the lead artist to then look at those things and go, yes, that's okay, or no, that's not okay. But I think from a concept design point of view, it's recognizing the question that needs to be answered that's really the important thing. And so for something like this, for a 3D model, clear form is important. Things like texture swatches, if you're going into texture, or even just like little crops of photos of a detail that you couldn't draw because of size, like a little nut or a bolt or a rivet. If you can find a photo of a similar bolt, just put that next to the drawing and say, make the bolts look like this, please. And then it's one of those things that you should try and answer as many questions as possible, but I think sometimes it's also actually beneficial to leave a few things slightly ambiguous if you have a 3D modeler that can take on that ambiguity as a bit of a challenge and solve it in a way that you may not have done. But it's always one of those tricky things, and again, because it's a process that goes back and forth, you shouldn't be expecting to hit the answer straight away, because if you do, you'll miss so many little subtleties and happy mistakes and like weird conversations about the shape of a chimney that you could have with someone, that if you just go and draw like the most generic chimney, or with just what your brain thinks a chimney is straight away, you're missing out on like all this potential cool design stuff that you could do otherwise. So, and I know like I think Courtney's asking that question. I know she's into characters and things, so I think a lot of times as well, when you're starting out, you do want to render stuff up so it looks good, so the painting looks good. But I think as you go along, you just get more confident in kind of like, oh, I've done the drawing and here's some flat tone, and that's sort of doing what I need it to do, and exactly,
you just become a bit more comfortable in yourself and on how those, and how that stuff is kind of coming out. So I think for right now, if you're starting out, like, don't be too worried about that stuff, because when you are working and you've got an art director kind of telling you how to do it and how long you've got, that's different to when you're a kind of a student and you've essentially got the whole week to do the thing, or whatever the case may be. So sometimes doing things in line and flat tones is purely the case of like, I've only got an hour to do this or whatever before the meeting happens, So so I'd say like probably don't worry too much about that stuff. Just get it looking as good as you can.
Exactly. Basically, and try and answer all the questions that you have in your own head about the design. If someone tells you, design me a spaceship that does X, Y, Z, make sure that X, Y, and Z are covered in the drawing. Even if they're not rendered really, really well, make sure X, Y, and Z is there, and then if that's there, then begin rendering and making it looking awesome and all that kind of stuff. And in previous weeks, Tim said the same thing when like doing a character, right? He's been showing demos. It's been like doing paint overs like an ogre or whatever, and it's like, oh, where does he live? What's he thinking about? How does he eat? What is they're all the things that should actually tell you kind of how to render it and how to finish those things. Exactly.
So awesome. Okay. Do you have anything else, Ned, that you want to talk about, like concept artists and that kind of thing?
I'm trying to think if there's anything that we haven't.
I think we've covered a lot of that.
We've covered a lot of
that.
The main questions that I remember being asked by a lot of people, and trying to think like all of the weird, all like the weird things that I was like worried about when I started working as well. But yeah, I think so. Nothing's coming to mind. If anyone has any other questions, just like chuck them in, and we'll talk about it for sure.
It's cool. Well, I mean, I think we can. One of the other things that I thought we could do today is just get Ned, seeing as he's here in the stream, to do a bit of a demo. So yeah, I don't know what you want to do, Ned.
I don't know what I want to do either.
You can.
God,
I'm going to hand you the wheels, and you can.
If you give me stuff. If you give me the Wacom and you give me a period of time, I'm probably just going to draw a car or or a spaceship or something. I'm trying to think if there's anything from my comic that I need to design that I could do. There is a character that I need to design, but I'm not confident enough doing characters on the internet live. It's not going to happen. Oh boy.
Well, I mean, unless you really want to do
spaceship. Chat says spaceship.
Yep. Go and do a spaceship.
I'll do a spaceship. Oh. I don't have my brushes. What am I going to do? Oh man, I don't know what any of these are. Just pick a thing. That'll do. Alright. If I can just turn this ever so slightly towards me.
So we've got another question. Your favorite concept artist or most recent amazing piece of concept art from a recent show or movie?
Oh man, I'm really bad with names, first of all, and I just don't just in general, I don't remember people's names. I'm really bad at it. I feel like I have some sort of mental issue that prevents me from doing that. So I couldn't name off anyone other than the standard list of internet famous concept artists. And in terms of also concept art from a recent show, I'm trying to think. I don't ever spend much time looking at stuff, to be honest. I look at I just go out and take photos of things and walk around and look at interesting plants and stuff, boring stuff like that.
It's funny how I think this also comes with experience, right? You kind of, I mean, I'm looking at stuff on Facebook and that sort of leads me to ArtStation and blah blah blah. You look at things, but you tend to as you kind of get a bit more, I don't know, as you get older, you kind of look at that stuff a bit less, right? I remember back in the day, I'd know every concept artist was doing everything and be trawling through everything on the internet, and but you kind of just get busy and
I don't do that stuff anymore.
But so wow, that was a cool answer to the question.
Yeah, sorry, just completely. Completely ignore your question.
So what are you doing here, Ned? Anyway, that's a little sneaky way of creating a grid.
Yeah, I just drew a bunch of horizontal lines and then I copied them together and then I warped them. And this is absolutely not a perfect 90-degree grid, but it's good enough. And it's mostly just for me to. I'm probably going to fade it back to the point where I don't know if the stream will even pick it up, but. I'm just going to kind of thumbnail something first, but I just put that grid in there just to kind of make sure that it's vaguely working. Sorry, I'm really pedantic about my drawing brushes, so I'm just going to fiddle around for a bit here. Got to find that right blue.
I was looking at the John Park Gumroad today, just having a look on there. There's lots of if you guys haven't checked that out, you should definitely check that out. So much amazing stuff on there. Who else? There's John Liberto, he's got some awesome Gumroads talking about spaceships. If you want to he's got some that kind of do line and color and showing all that stuff.
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
All that relatively kind of simple ones.
One person I'm a huge fan of is a guy called Darren Bartley.
Yep.
Who
Tyler's more talented brother.
Yeah, that's it. The Darren Bartley stuff is really cool. He's just got a style and he's got a personal project called Tribal that he's been working on for a long time. I have no idea what I'm drawing.
Spaceship.
Okay, I know that. Yeah. Watch this. Yeah, actually watch this. Start that again. Just trying to think of what this spaceship could do or look like.
So yeah, guys, once again, if you got any questions, just fire them away and we can answer them. Especially while Ned is painting, then that'll give him a bit of time to think about what he's doing.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like one of the questions that people might ask me, but don't, maybe because I don't know, they might think it'd be rude or whatever, is like, why the hell do you always just draw like spaceships and cars and stuff when people ask you to do demos?
Why the hell do you always draw spaceships and cars, Ned?
Well,
when you could draw some really awesome castle on the lake.
Yep. Well, it's because I've always. I like mechanical things, and for whatever reason, like my interests in art and design have always kind of lay in the non-character realm. I'm not, for whatever reason, don't know why, maybe I'm a sociopath, but I've never had a huge amount of interest in like the character development side of things. I don't know why, but I've always had a massive interest in mechanics and architecture. And one of the first jobs I ever had when I went kind of freelance concept art was designing race cars. And I didn't really ever draw cars before that. It was one of these jobs that I literally just fell into it, and I was really not qualified for it at all. Even though I said that people won't come out of the darkness and just hire you randomly, this was literally that. I had someone come out and just hire me.
These are the best type of jobs, Ned.
It turned out to be a really good job. I really enjoyed it, but it was a struggle at the start. And I had to design these really teched out, crazy race cars. And it was a real struggle, and it's what forced me to learn ZBrush, because I realized I couldn't draw what I wanted to draw. It just wasn't turning out properly, and so I modeled it, and I drew over the top again, so like further proof that just kind of bashing stuff together until you get the visual result you need is what you have to do in this job. And so ever since then, I've kind of like forced myself to just keep drawing them and kind of expand my skill set in that area. It's something I need to do with characters as well, and that's also another reason why I'm working on this comic book as well, because it forces me to draw people. But it's got cars in it too, so that keeps me interested. So that's one of the reasons I do it, is because I just have a bit of a soft spot for them ever since I was kind of forced to do them as a job. And then like kind of mix. I think I just realized that, hang on a sec, I've always really liked cars. Why don't I just draw these more? So maybe it's not the most interesting question in the world, but I always kind of feel like a bit of a weirdo for like showing off my professional portfolio, and then whenever anyone asks me to draw something, I just turn around and draw something that's not really in my portfolio. But I think it's, again, like it kind of speaks to the whole personal work side of things. Is it's really important to, I think, not take time off, but like when you do have a bit of spare time, draw the stuff that you're actually super interested in. Because the reality of this job also is that a lot of times you're drawing stuff you don't really have a massive interest in, because it's not your project or whatever. It's one of those things that you can really tell that I knew exactly how big this spaceship was going to be when I started drawing it.
You're getting lots of help here, Ned. We're asking for guns and hyperdrives.
It's going to have guns.
And it should be purple. And
purple.
It's a creature with guns. I'm not sure how that got in there.
That might not happen. This is going to be my bastardization of an X-Wing. That's what this is going to be.
So one of the things, like, while you're kind of tinkering away at this, Ned, is I always feel that, people get really like hung up on the perspective grid and things like that, right? And I can see like your process here is you kind of got it in there at the start, and then you're drawing some stuff on the grid. And, yeah, but you're kind of drawing some stuff, and then you're not, and then you are. And I feel that over time you're just going to kind of work out. You're sort of going to work that perspective back into it, right?
Yeah.
And do you have sort of tips on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, any of my first year students watching are probably laughing at this point, because I always tell them to draw out grids. But it's one of those things that I drew that grid mostly just to give myself an orientation of where the object was going to be. So like the grid has a short side and a long side. And so this is a vehicle that's relatively it's a long vehicle, so it's going to have a short side and a long side as well. So the grid just gave me that kind of orientation. Really what it told me is that this vehicle's facing towards the left. And then after that, I'm kind of obviously there's like this has a bunch of slopes and stuff in it which are not going to necessarily line up to the grid, because the grid is only dealing with lines that run parallel to the ground plane at this point in time. So it is very much a case of, and I'm eyeballing it as well, and I'll probably, like, if we flip this horizontally, cringe, it's not too bad, but it's yeah, one of those things that I'm really just concentrating on shapes at this point. I don't really care about the perspective yet, because I can always fix it. That's like the great thing about Photoshop, is you can always go in and it's not what I want. Where's like the normal? There it is. Oh, someone's changed the hotkeys. I see. Yeah, I'm not concerned about it, because I can always fix it. I can always come back in and just tweak things around and fix it. And I get one of the things that I am super grateful to have been gifted with is an ability to judge perspective relatively well. And I know that's like probably a really nasty thing to say, but it's just one of those things that I can't remember names, but I've always been pretty good at eyeballing perspective. And so for me, it's I've kind of learned the way that I can deal with perspective and a perspective grid, and kind of just like get it in roughly again to kind of save time. Yeah, so I'm kind of using 5 different kind of ways of ignoring the perspective grid. But I think it's one of those things that when you do this enough, you get to the point where if something is wrong, you know why it's wrong, and you can just go and fix it.
Yeah.
If you don't know why it's wrong, that's when you just start kind of floundering and drawing random things. So it's a matter of being kind of confident with the strokes you're making, and also like deliberate with the strokes you're making as well. Because if you start making non-deliberate strokes, that's when you kind of start to potentially run into a little bit of trouble. Oh boy, that's a long question. Oh, keeps going.
Oh, so we've got some more questions here. So you know that the story, all concept arts have where you turn up to work on your first day and they ask you for 5 designs of character by the end of the day, and you say sure, and then shit yourself when they leave the room because you have no idea how you're going to get all that done. My question was, what kind of quality are they expecting those 5 designs to be? Because I think part of the reason why people freak out is that they think they have to do 5 polished, unique designs in that time, but that's not necessarily the case, right? I think that probably, you know, when you're coming in and you're starting out, is that probably somebody's not going to ask you for 5 designs in one day, is probably the answer to that question.
Yes.
Right? The more freaking out bit will be that you come in and you're, you know, going to be part of a team, and you see all the other artists' work and you're comparing yourself to those people, and the art director's work is amazing, and you're feeling very out of your depth.
Inadequate.
And even just getting one character design done in one day is going to be a tough ask. And probably, you know, they're not really going to ask you to do that either, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't sort of I don't think you need to sort of worry too much about that side of things. Like, as in, you know, if I get a job, how am I gonna
keep it?
Yeah, deal with that. But you know, the biggest thing is like, you know, working on your portfolio now, you know, making sure that you are building your skills so that when you do get asked to do, you know, various types of things, you can handle that situation and not have a meltdown.
Yeah.
You know, essentially. Everyone will still have a meltdown because it's just a daunting thing, you know. It's like first day of school, or, you know, first day of university, or whatever it is. It's you know, first day of a new job where you're getting, you know, working on Call of Duty or something, where you've got to design some tanks or something or other.
It's going to be scary.
It's going to be daunting, but so I guess the question is, like, what are they sort of expecting? Well, they'll just be expecting what it is that you do. You know, the thing is that they'll have hired you on the portfolio that you've got, and generally, like, you're not going to get the job if you don't have a good enough portfolio. So once you come in, then they're going to be expecting sort of the level of what is in your portfolio.
Yeah.
So if you kind of think that you can sit down and in front of people, kind of do that, then you're on the right track. And you're going to be okay.
It's one of those, like you said, I think like no one's necessarily going to just jump on you and say, you've got to do 20 designs straight at this hotkey for Lasso Tools. Going to shit me to tears. But no one's going to jump down your throat straight away and be like, here's this. If they do, that's probably going to be on them rather than you, because a good art director is going to know that you're probably silently scared, because they probably would have been as well, and they probably still are when they go to a new job. It's probably the most important thing I say is that everyone you work with in this industry is a person. No one's going to be like some horrendous draconian dictator who's going to come in and be like, this is the worst thing I've ever seen, get out of here, why did we even hire you? Like, they hired you for a reason. You're going to have a little bit of time to get settled in, because that it's a hard job. It's hard to do. It's no one's expecting you to necessarily just be like perfect straight away. You've got to get used to the style. You've got to get to know the team you're working with, all that kind of stuff. And so it's not going to be a massive thing like that. I think I don't know if I can answer the question really, because I don't think it's a question you really have to worry about. I think it's a little bit of like a common nightmare. And
well, I definitely get the question, as in like, I think that lots of people, like we kind of, I think a lot of guys probably think that we give that analogy as a thing all the time, right?
Yeah,
like I think that everyone thinks that teachers sort of say that type of stuff, right? But and we do, but it's more sort of thing where it's not going to happen straight away.
No,
it's something that will.
Yeah, you're going to have good days and bad days. Very few of them are going to be irreparable. So it's one of those things. And like I said, I've had like freelance jobs too, where you're kind of separated from a team, and I've been given a brief and I've completely just completely stuffed it up, whether on through various, I've had ones where it's been miscommunication on my behalf, it's been miscommunication on someone else's behalf, it's just been a bad brief, or it's just been I've been having a really crap day and the work I've done was terrible. All of the companies that I've done work for that I've stuffed briefs up for have actually been companies that I've worked for again. Probably I've had more companies that I've done work that I was really happy with that I haven't worked with again for whatever reason. I couldn't speak to why, but none of the companies that I've all the days that I still remember now and just like shudder, I still work for those companies. So everyone you work for is a person, and you are there for a particular reason. And if you can prove that you are capable of doing your job, you will be excused the occasional mind fart for sure. It's and I think like also another thing that I learned with freelancing, this is not necessarily kind of related to the question in a sense, but I've had just completely forgot what I was going to say. That's what's happened.
We've got
keep going. I'll remember.
Another question was that was a story Kevin Chen specifically told about his first day at Disney, which is why I went with that. He said he wound up working there until very late that night.
Yeah,
and I think no matter where you start, that is going to happen.
It's going to happen. Full stop.
You want to impress and you want to do a good job.
Yeah,
and you don't want to get fired. So you're always going to try and do a really good job, and all that type of thing. So anyway, I think you should be trying to.
That story specifically, like Kevin's story, I think probably speaks more to his work ethic than what was expected of him. I'm sure if he had gone, look guys, I'm the junior here, I've never done this before, I really struggled with this and I only got 3 done, they wouldn't have thrown him out of a window, right? But he's the kind of guy that would go, well look, I've got to get it done, so I'm going to do it. I think there's a certain sense of drama to that kind of story, which is, really interesting. But then I think also the reality of it is that the world works in slightly different ways in reality. Yeah.
But I think it's a good question. I think it's everyone's going to be nervous
Absolutely.
when you're starting out doing those things. So yeah, it's fine.
If you're not nervous, something's wrong.
That's right.
I was going to put guns on this, wasn't I? Whoops.
There's still time.
There's still time. So again,
guns at the front or something.
Yeah, I want to put a really big stupid gun on it, like a really big stupid gun on it. Here's another little trick. Just draw one good circle and use it constantly.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, guys, if you've just sort of like jumped into the stream and things, working a whole bunch of stuff behind the scenes.
I'm not Peter, first of all.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
yeah, that's what I was going to say as well. Is that we do not have Pete with us this week. He will be joining us next week. He had some personal stuff he had to deal with, so yeah, he'll be back then, and he was very apologetic, working on some stuff behind the scenes with Twitch, just to make things even cooler and giving you guys more access to things and all sorts of stuff. We're now Twitch affiliate, so yeah, you can kind of subscribe and stuff each month. At the moment, that doesn't really do anything because we don't have the things set up for it, but that's the stuff that we're kind of working on. We're really hoping to have some cool stuff for you guys happening soon, and we'll be working on that behind the scenes, very diligently trying to get some cool stuff for you guys. And are you just drawing with blue, Ned, just as like a bit of an underlay kind of thing? Is that?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So this is not going to be the the final line work. Just drawing with blue at the moment. I guess as a weird homage to Color Ace pencils, which I'm too young to have actually ever used. But I've heard they were all the rage. So
man, you make me feel old, Ned.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Used them lots of times.
I own one. It's in a glass case.
In a glass case.
Along with a couple of dinosaur bones and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to make this pretty much just a chain gun with a cockpit at the back of it and an engine. Hopefully it looks all right. Let's just blend all these layers down.
So we've got a question: which like kind of Hollywood project would you have loved to have been a part of, e.g., Lord of the Rings, Fifth Element, etc.?
Oh,
pick the one that speaks to you the most.
Oh, Fifth Element.
100%.
100%. It's like my favorite movie ever.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'm actually a really big Fifth Element fan as well.
Yep.
Valerian? Not so much.
No. Some cool design work in there, but as a film, I don't think it came together too well. But no, yeah, Fifth Element, absolutely. From those two in the list there. Like I said before, I'm terrible at recalling things. Like I watched a bunch of movies, but it's
something I would have loved to would have been The Matrix. I think, like, I just remember seeing that, back and there was so much cool stuff in there. Yeah,
absolutely.
But there was amazing designers that worked on that.
Yeah,
Jeff Darrow is like this kind of old school. I think he's English.
Sounds like an English name.
Yeah, that would do all these crazy line drawings to all those spaceship interiors and stuff. And there was George Hull did heaps of design work for those movies. Pretty awesome stuff.
Should I be like super corny and put like a little? Yes, I should.
Let's go.
It's probably, yeah. Like, I kind of said this before with like, hey, you should just work on stuff that you want to work on with your personal stuff, and like I really believe that. Like when I draw these like little spaceships and stuff, I just have fun with them. I'm really not concerned about what anyone else thinks about them or or anything like that. I'm just kind of having fun with this stuff, and a lot of my like character work as well, especially for the comic, is just like ridiculous. It's stupid, and all the people are like satirical, like just satires of themselves. And I mean that's one thing that they're the projects that I love working on professionally as well, but they're kind of a little bit few and far between because a lot of the stuff that you get to work on can be a little bit, let's say, like cookie cutter sometimes. But yeah, so I think again, like that's why it's so important to have fun with this stuff, is because you often don't get the opportunity to do something this stupid without someone tapping on the shoulder and saying, excuse me, that's not going to work. So yeah, that's kind of where that comes from. So I think like, even though this is like, it's pretty scribbly, I think there's enough. I can actually safely turn off that perspective grid because I've ignored it entirely. I think the perspective is okay though. Is there anything that's standing out?
Seeing as you got to this point now, do you want to have a 5-minute break?
Sure.
So we're going to have a quick little break, guys. We'll come back and Ned will put some line work over the top of this.
I will.
All right. Okay, we'll see you guys soon.
Awesome.
right, guys. Yeah, so we're back from break, and I thought I might just go over some critiques as well. I realised today that we kind of forgot to put the note up this week about people putting their work up for critiques, but some people did. So let's just kind of go through and have a look, and we can do
finish
some
the
things.
drawing later.
Yeah. So maybe Ned, you can have a look at some of this stuff if you
Cool.
want.
Yeah,
Give
for
some
sure.
critiques. So this is Anthony Robinson, and
Cool.
yeah, his basically these are actually all of his
all of his.
things
Okay,
here.
cool.
So zoom
in on them.
check
Yeah,
them out
cool.
if you want.
Okay,
But
cool.
yeah, maybe just
I'll
let you drive. Sorry.
Zoom around a bit. Awesome. Cool. I think like as like this, I like as a scene. I think it works really well, and it feels very much like populated. I think like one of the things that a lot of people miss out with this kind of image is you'll end up with a room that maybe looks a little bit empty or weird, or there's no focus on the entire frame. But I think the focus on the frame here is really cool. I think if I was gonna change anything, I'd probably just offset. It's a little bit of a cheap trick, but maybe just like I just realized I can actually like draw on this, kind of. If at the moment we have like a frame that's about here, I feel like this is something that could just be Dutched ever so slightly, because if she's playing and so yeah, Dutch just means a Dutch angle, which is essentially just barreling the camera left or right like this. I just feel like, because if she's playing video games, she's probably getting into it.
Anthony just said he's moved the cat to the right of the girl as well.
Okay.
Do you have like a new version, Anthony? Do you want to just quickly Facebook message it to me? Can you do that? Is that possible?
We'll see. Pending a reply, I'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think like as a composition, it's nice. There's not a huge amount that I would change massively in the frame, but I think I would probably just Dutch it a bit, just to give the entire thing a little bit more of a offset look, like that, something like that. And then you said,
Anthony, could you just send? Do you want to send the new version over on Facebook Messenger, and then Ned can draw over the new version? Let's say the wonders of the internet. Can we make this magic happen?
Because what I'm also going to do is actually, if you said you put the cat on the right, what I'm going to do is there's one little change I would make to the cat, and I'm going to get rid of him here.
That's a big change, Ned.
No, I'm going to add him back in. Don't worry, and he's going to be on the right too. So this might actually just be exactly what Anthony's about to send us. Now you get to see me try and draw a cat. Is that maybe if we like have the girl kind of a little bit kind of.
Okay, hang on, Ned.
Hold on. I'll stop.
Oh, beeping. It's a good start.
Alrighty. Oh, that is the cat on the right, definitely. Okay, so I think we can match the Dutch angle again. Getting a little bit of a tangent at the top of the frame, but that's all right for now. I think, yeah, so I'd bring the cat around there, but then maybe just, I just feel like the pose in this could be a little bit more dynamic, where maybe the girl is kind of a little bit kind of hunched down and like really kind of she's got her elbows out. And maybe giving the controller a bit of like one of those, leaning into the corner or something. You could even, like, if you wanted to be a little bit dramatic, you could like throw the cable out at an angle like that. You have to be careful not to get it in the way of anything, but something like that. And geez, I'm not gonna redraw the entire face, but maybe looking more up at the screen, and her ponytail can be kind of.
So just
So
trying to
she's
get
really-
a bit more gesture.
just a little
into
bit of
the
gesture,
pose and
yeah,
stuff,
because I think as a frame, I think the composition is nice as a scene. It's working really well. You've got all like, you've got the soda and the Doritos and the pizza, and it's all there, and so it sells itself as that. But I feel just like a little bit of gesture into the God, I haven't drawn like a little cartoon kind of person like this for a long time. And then like maybe the cat, instead of just being on the ground next to her, could be like up on her shoulder or something like that. Like he's getting into it as much as much as she is, and or like you could have him. God, yeah, I don't draw animals, guys. This is it's like on an arm or something like that. So I know that's a really crap sketch over the top, but just to bring it in a little bit more like that. And so I think the idea of what I've tried to draw there is probably more important than what I've actually drawn. But something like that. And so I think again, it's like I don't think I've mentioned this tonight, but I know it's something I've definitely said in some of my classes is, and it doesn't matter what you're designing, if the brief you've given yourself or the brief that you're given doesn't really give you a story point, try and make a story point up. So if you just think, I'm gonna draw a girl like playing some video games and having fun and eating junk food, think about how she'd be feeling there, like she's getting into the game, or if it's like a really scary game, she'd be hiding behind the couch. And I feel like the cat character, with something like that, you think of the cat as kind of like a little bit of a foil to the protagonist, where it's a little bit of comic relief, and really the cat's going to be kind of mirroring what she's doing, and I feel like that makes it a little bit more of a relatable story moment, because if you've had a cat, it's like they're either going to react to you, or you're trying to play video games and they're like trying to swat the cord of the controller or something like that. And I feel like having that kind of mental approach to an image like this just allows you to build in those really kind of exciting little fun moments, because I think it's a really fun image. I think it works really well. So I'm gonna like remove my crappy sketch, because I think like that works really well, and I like it's fun that she's got like a mouthful of popcorn there, and there's like crumbs flying and stuff like that. But I feel like just in terms of the pose, just to push those shapes a little bit more, and I think like because there's a lot of stuff in there that I can tell you have thought about it in a way, like the way that the cord is going through her toes, I think is a really nice like little quirky detail. And that maybe gives her the sense that she's kind of like really tense about it, and she's like, but I'd like like stretch her leg out or something so she can be, you really get that kind of dynamism into it. And other than that, I mean, there's not too much I would say really. I think the line works nice and clean. Like I said, I think the room is like nicely put together. I did just notice. Sorry, I always do this. I noticed a little perspective issue with this couch here. Just because we're kind of seeing it front on like that, but I feel like the distortion on this lens would enable us to see the inside of that armrest there. So that's really easy change. You don't have to change anything at all.
Yeah, and just watching like the perspective of the top of the bars and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I think like that's going up a little bit too much, right? I think that there's a certain amount of wiggle room you've got with like the stylization and stuff like that. And I think like your horizon is good because you've got like the horizon kind of running through there, so that's all fine. I think everything else works pretty well. I think from an aesthetic point of view as well, I'd say that obviously you've got some line in the back here which is quite sketchy, and we can see some construction lines under it. I think there's probably something to be said for the way that you've kind of drawn out the girl and her hair. There's some really nice dynamism in those strokes. We're losing a little bit of that in the TV and the DVD boxes and the desk at the front. And I think you might have kind of got a little bit beholden to the fact that like, a TV is square and a DVD box is all squared up. And I think you're losing some of the gesture of the stroke there, which I would just try and bring in. You can either try and hit it as not like that, but you can try and hit it with a straight line from a Wacom. We could be here all night if we're doing that. But even something a little bit wiggly like that, for like a straight line in this kind of image is fine, because you're kind of, if you set a precedent for like, hey, that's what a straight line has to look like, then every straight line has to be perfect. If you just go, it doesn't really matter, like as long as it's like close enough is good enough for a TV, as long as they're like, for the bevel of the TV, it might take a few goes, but as long as you get them kind of nice and evenly spaced like that, that's good enough. And it kind of along with the Dutch angle and along with like a dynamic pose and kind of like a really quirky kind of scene going on, straight lines like that straight lines like that are totally fine, because they sell kind of the movement of the image.
Well, even just like you can make these lines, so I'm pointing at the screen, you can make these lines here where you're using the line tool or whatever, but even just using another line from the line tool to make like bits of it thicker and thinner, could be good to kind of do that too.
Yeah, one thing I do a lot is it depends on the kind of brush you have, but if you do the old shift click and just go back and forth a bunch, and if you deliberately miss a couple of times like that, as long as the overall gesture of that line is nice and straight, you can then very quickly, and you can have a bit of overrun on the lines too, right? Like not that much, this is emphasizing it for a point, but you can have a little bit of overrun where you go too far on the end of each line, and if your style kind of allows for that, then you can kind of set a little bit of a extra a bit of extra dynamism into the piece.
Yeah, cool. And there's a couple more of Anthony's.
The ones
let's
go up.
As well. And I think there's a sketch for that.
A sketch for that guy too. Yeah. Okay, so we've got like a bit of a render and a bit of a. Why don't we let's take this and put it next to the. Oh. Cool. All right, so we've got a bit of a lava kind of mage.
Is it meant to be like a weapon he's holding, Anthony? Or is it? Because the first thing is that's kind of weird. Well, I guess his arm is got some stuff.
He's got some
on
like
it that makes him be able to
lava
hold
crystal.
that
Yeah,
stuff.
I feel like he's maybe a bit of a fire mage or something, because he's got a tome of some sort down here. So I think you're starting to build a bit of a character with this. There's certainly stuff in there that you can make some, we can make some assumptions about and start to guess. He's obviously a fire character of some sort. I think he's a mage, but it's fire summoned thing. Okay, so like a fire blade that he's summoned. Not too much thought about the weapon, he says. I think like something like that, kind of holding fire is a little bit strange maybe. It's probably like, let's get it a little bit kind of inside.
I just think it needs a bit of a handle.
Yeah, it needs something tangible, I think. I feel like if he had a staff or like a halberd or something that he could set on fire at will, I think that would be really cool. But I think having an intangible kind of fire object can be something a little bit strange. I think he can kind of you can shoot fireballs, but maybe if you're going to hold fire it gets a little bit crazy. But anyway, I don't want to get hung up on a little thing. I think
it could just be that like the arm thing's cool, so maybe that could like transition down into that a bit, and maybe this could just be a handle. Sorry, I'm pointing at the screen again. It's when you don't have a Wacom stylus. Sorry, what? So like maybe where his arm kind of texture, that could move down into here a little bit potentially, Anthony, and then you could have a handle up here, and then it sort of like transitions down, and these bits could be kind of fire and stuff. I think that could be kind of cool, something like that. So saying something about the long lines of the weapons the Balrog uses in Lord of the Rings. Oh man, he's got those like, I'm trying to think.
I can't think back that far.
Blade things.
Okay.
But I think it's cool. I think like a lot of this stuff in here is really nice.
Yeah, I think like the anatomy's good. I think the gesture, like obviously it's a character piece. I think it doesn't like, it's more of like a design drawing in a vacuum rather than an illustration piece of a character. So the pose has to be relatively static so that it's easy to kind of see everything that's going on. I think like he could probably have a little bit more of a gesture in his pose though. If this is a guy that has a fire sword thing, he's probably pretty dangerous. And he's kind of just standing there as like, here I am. I feel like he could probably just have a bit more of weight to his poses if he's about to do something. But I think like all of the anatomy looks pretty good. Obviously he's missing a face in the rendered version, so that's looks like there was a face there, but then you went nope, getting rid of that. But I think like the proportions of the skull and stuff that you've got set up there are fine to work a face into. I'd probably bring his ear a little bit forward towards the rest of his facial features though. It's probably sitting a little bit far back in the drawing. And then I think, again, just from like a character design point of view, he's maybe a little bit anachronistic in terms of modern day kind of clothing versus kind of medieval capey stuff, because he's got like a bit of a puffer vest with a real like popped kind of like modern looking kind of collar with like stitching in the hem and stuff like that, and his pants look relatively modern, and he's
kind of like the have you seen all the recent Final Fantasy stuff?
He is a little, yeah. There's a little bit of that, yeah.
Or are they fantasy, or what the heck is going on with those guys?
Yeah, it's Final Fantasy.
I don't think anyone knows.
So, and I mean, this is coming of like definitely from kind of my personal preference for character stuff, right? I feel like you just really, if he is some sort of like modern day mage, I feel like you really lean into the modern day stuff, and if he's a medieval mage, you really lean into that.
I feel it's a bit like kind of halfway in between.
I'm not a subtle designer. I like to kind of go like one way or the other, and so I think, I'd go with that. And then I think like I don't want to nitpick it because it is a really nice drawing, and I think it's a cool idea. I'm not a huge fan of the single horn. I feel like if he has one horn, it's probably needs to be bigger than that, and if he had two horns, you need to show that he lost one or something along those lines. Again, I think that's like it could be a cool idea. I think it's just a little bit middle of the road now, where I just like really push it one way or the other. But and I feel like there's maybe some sort of significance to the symbol on the book, which is, or there could be some sort of significance to the symbol on the book where you just push it, whether or not it matches the kind of the swirly line work that's going on here with the fire. If you have like another emblem there that kind of matches that, or if it matches another marking that he has on him, just to show that it's that he's all part of like the same thing. But yeah, I do really like a lot of this line work in here. I think this is really cool. I think working some of that back into him in some way, whether or not it's like filigree on the leather or I'd probably not a tattoo. I'm not a big fan of like forced pattern tattoos on characters, but
just right on his face,
just a big neck tattoo. Yeah, that's it. No, it's cool. But I think like you've done a really good job with the form of like the boots and stuff. That stuff can be quite hard to do. And the drapery and the fabric in the pants is working quite well, and again in the jacket, and it's all the clothes are sitting on his body really nicely, which is
I think it's more just the style. Like I don't kind of picture someone like this wearing sort of 3/4 pants.
Yeah,
with, like it just doesn't quite match.
Yeah,
he's like what they were saying. It feels kind of a bit modern and a bit medieval kind of thing. So I think it's just a matter of kind of like marrying up those little bits, Anthony. But I think it's cool. I think your rendering is improving heaps. I think there's lots of really nice stuff going on. So yeah, so it's great. So keep going with it, keep pushing it. Finish those things off, and certainly would love to see how it ends up, Anthony.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think like the main thing to take away from it is like all of the little things we've pulled out there are character-based things and not technical-based things. I think technically it's totally fine. There's not really anything I'd pull out of that and go, this needs to be fixed. It's just like in terms of like the mental process of getting through and building that character up. But yeah, no, it's really cool. So nice work.
Awesome. And we've got one last image here from Tom. I don't know if you want to just crop this down or something.
Yeah, let's kind of get
stuff in the background. Or just put a layer in there or something.
Well, whoops. Sorry, this was meant to go a lot quicker in my head. Don't do that. Okay. Cool. Nice. Alrighty, so we've got a big kind of Cthulhu, but not Cthulhu. I see tentacles.
This is actually a sci-fi version of Ursula.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to think of the name in my head. I was like, who's that person? Yeah, cool, okay. Nice. So, Ursula was Little Mermaid, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Sorry, this is me with not being able to remember names again. I think technically it's a really nice drawing, and I think there's a lot of really cool stuff in there in terms of like the anatomy. The gesture of the tentacles is really nice. The twist in the torso is really cool. I think maybe the gesture just gets a little bit too straight at the top, where the arm's coming like straight up and the neck's coming straight up, and we've got this awesome twist in the torso, and then it kind of just stops at the top. So I think maybe just kind of like tweaking the neck and the head, just one way to kind of complete that on a new layer at the top. So you've got this really nice kind of twist up here, which is making a lot of this stuff read really well, and like the shoulder blades are kind of oriented in this way. And so if someone was going to kind of turn their head back towards the camera, you'd probably get their head a little bit more on this kind of orientation like that. And then of course you can kind of bend the neck down. Get the chin into chin, but bend the neck down like that. So you're really not far off. I think all the main volumes are kind of there, like that. And then and then again with that kind of curve, this arm is going to kind of come up at this kind of angle like that, rather than just straight up in the air. And then I think this one at the back is pretty good. You'll have some pretty tricky foreshortening with that, because the arm would probably go back kind of there and then might come down. So a lot of that arm's going to be obscured. But I think like just kind of tweaking this stuff, and you can still have that kind of front on facial. You'll get a little bit of like under the nose, a little bit more if we just draw the kind of the brow bone in there. You'll be a little bit more under the nose. Like that. But I think you can probably tweak a lot of that existing line work in there if you just want to make a quick fix to see if it works straight away and see if you like it. That's all I'd probably say in terms of like anatomy and stuff like that. Probably, yeah, like all of this stuff down here is really nice. Like I think the suggestion of kind of the creases in the tentacles and stuff is really good.
It's getting awkward.
Hey?
It's getting awkward.
Awkward? No, that's all right. That's all good. I think probably working on...
I just mean from a creepy nether regions point of view.
Well, yeah, but you've got to... So it's a problem that everyone's going to have to deal with at some point in their design career. I think like probably working on how the octopus bit joins to the like presumably kind of human-ish skin. Like we can kind of see like gills and crazy like gill ear things here. So she's presumably not like getting to be human, but because she does have human arms and kind of this like a relatively like humanoid or very humanoid face with some kind of fish-like features, I think just like dealing with how, whether it's like skin patterning or, because obviously octopus don't have scales, but or some sort of like breakup in the material comes up here.
I think that's just an awesome way where you can kind of transition it from the stomach down into those tentacles, right?
Yeah, because I'm trying to think back to the original Ursula design. She had like a bit of a kind of like corset kind of bodice thing, I think. I could be misremembering. It was
probably just to hide the...
I think it was just to keep it all PG. Yeah, exactly.
Connections.
Areas. And I think like you could use that as like a bit of a kind of like bikini top or something up here if you ran some of like whatever the octopus skin is kind of further up the torso. You can kind of, and then depending on what, if you really want to hit that same kind of Ursula kind of character note of this real kind of almost like matriarchal crazy kind of woman, that real kind of like, because I think she has like a real kind of like plunging neckline kind of brassiere type thing.
Yeah, that's right.
And because she's like a real kind of voluptuous woman in the Little Mermaid, and so obviously this one's a little bit more kind of, it's muscular, but it's like a lot more kind of slight. And so I think, but like still having that kind of really kind of forceful kind of fashionista kind of costuming in that way would be really cool.
Yeah, but you could even do it just sort of patterning, couldn't you?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be clothes. It can just be like a different skin texture that comes up over the top. Because with a character like that, you do actually kind of have to make a design decision on like, is this creature naked, or is it is the patterning on their skin working in a way that we can consider them to be kind of like clothed, or what are you going to do? And so because if you have humanoid features, people are looking for kind of humanoid features, right? Which means you have to kind of go nipples or not. And it's like, you kind of like, do you put clothing over the top of it, or what do you do?
It's a tough decision.
The big question every day. Nipples or not?
Yeah.
It's the name of
these are the questions you should be asking, guys.
It's the name of my memoir. Yeah. And so...
So you can save these questions for Tim next week.
Yeah, Tim will love this kind of stuff. Yeah. Save them for Pete. Pete will have a field day.
Pete likes really
Yep.
talking. He
She
really
needs
does
bigger
like
pecs. That's what he'll
talking
say.
about nipples.
He loves it. And then okay, so let's just get rid of some of this stuff here, so we can have a look at the face. Like I think like it's a nice face. It's a nicely drawn face. And it's definitely kind of a younger kind of take, I think, on the Ursula character, which is presumably fine. And I think what I'm probably missing is sci-fi. I think is what I would say. Is it's not necessarily sci-fi. Like, and I'm trying to think like how you could, like that's a tricky brief, sci-fi Ursula. I think it's doable, but it's a tricky one because she's not a sci-fi character. But I think like to add some sort of thing in there, I don't know, would I go like maybe kind of androidy maybe, but it depends if you can kind of work that into the story. Trying to think.
I think she's just still a sea creature, but in the future.
Yeah, right, okay.
So I guess it probably doesn't have to
crude
be
oil
a
and
body
has
or
a
anything. It's just
six-pack
more...
wrapped around her wrist.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think you could work in some like small stylistic detail that would push the sci-fi. Yeah, she doesn't have to be a robot or anything, but and maybe through the weapon, because you've got a weapon here which is a obviously synthetic kind of man-made thing that could have some sort of like science fiction little twist to it or something like that. And then I think you have to be a little bit careful with spiky stuff like this. Around the neck, because you want it to look functional and kind of scary, but without looking like if she accidentally gets like a itchy ear or something and she impales herself. Always like that's a really like there's cool and spiky and stuff, but I feel like maybe if you just kind of just like bend these down a little bit more, just to kind of push that silhouette away from her face a little bit. And then I'd probably I can see a few little spikes kind of coming on here, but I'd maybe. Don't want to make it look like a goth, but you could have some like other like just push the spikes a little bit more. I think is probably what I'm trying to get at, and just push the shapes of them a little bit more. Whether or not see a lot of like conch shells and stuff have kind of spikes that are like I'm so bad at drawing things that's twisted, but kind of like like these twisted shapes in the in there, something like that.
Cool. Which kind of replicates some of the tentacles a little bit and stuff.
It's like, because a lot of like, obviously the main part of this image, or the main gesture of all of this image is like you have this awesome twist here, this really nice twist there, and that there, and then again, like I said, you've got that really nice twist in the torso, which I think if you just push that into the head, and then again with the arm, everything's kind of coming up and around, and then you get this really nice sense of obviously this is, if she's doing something there, whether or not she's like, if it's like a call to battle, or it's like she's holding something, or it's some sort of an energy beam there, a lot of the focus is coming up here past the head, where we've got this nice like stoic expression, and then onto whatever the hand is doing. And then a lot of these tentacles are going to serve to bring the eye back down into the composition, and the whole cycle kind of like starts again, which is exactly what you want with this kind of stuff. So I think there's some really, really cool stuff in there. I think just thinking about how you deal with material breakup in here, which is also going to inform how you render this thing. And then just making a few of those little anatomical changes. And like I said, I think you can really just kind of cut the head out, tweak it, move it to the side a little bit. And then again, you might have to do a redraw of the arm just to get that angle in there. But I think like, there's a lot of really cool stuff in there. Like other than that, the anatomy is pretty solid. I'd probably maybe not emphasize the bottom of the rib cage quite so much, but again, that can be something you can figure out in render as well. But I think that's really cool.
Yeah, awesome,
nice. Maybe a few little background details too, just if you want to kind of push it that way too, just in front of like a big coral outcrop, or
I think this is sitting on top of a wave thing or something.
Okay, cool, awesome,
But really great, Tom. Awesome. Keep going. Cool stuff. Get it done.
Exactly. Just finish it off for sure.
Yeah, so there were a few things that we got during the week. So awesome. Cool stuff, guys. And do you want to, we'll spend the next 15 minutes or so. Do you want to do a bit more line work on your
I can do that.
Drawing.
See if we can find it. I'm going to go past it, I guarantee you.
Be the very last one.
But the very last one's right next to the first one. think it's going to be pretty soon. There it is. All right. Cool. So I'm going to just, yeah, because if I only got 15 minutes, I'm going to jump straight into, where's my brush palette? There it is. Straight into something a little bit more final. I'm going to tone the background because I like to do that. Alrighty, and I'm just going to flip this horizontally again. Alrighty, this might get a little bit kind of close in and hard to look at. Sorry. I'll try and give this a relatively quick kind of line treatment as well. I'm not going to labor it too much, mostly because there's a few forms in here that I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with them. So if I draw them a little bit looser, hopefully no one will be able to tell. That's a great pro tip, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just fake the whole thing. I have a massive kind of mental library of like default kind of spaceship shapes and car shapes in my head. If you go and look at a lot of my like personal work and stuff like that, you will start to see all of this stuff that you might have at one stage gone, oh wow, that's a real original way to draw the cockpit of a spacecraft or something like that. But then if you kind of, it's one of those things that the more of something you draw, the more you start to like learn the symbolism kind of behind it, in the same way that like, you know, you can draw an eye like that and most people go, oh, that's an eye, but it's not really an eye. That's not what an eye looks like at all. But if you draw that, people go, oh, it's an eye. And so you can do the same thing with anything really. It's like, you know, that's a car. It's a real bad car, but if you show that to anyone, they're going to go car. And so, you know, once you start to learn how to draw things and you've done it enough, you start, you know, you do kind of, often it can be a little bit of a trap, but you have to be careful not to fall into, because especially when you're designing stuff, things can start to look very similar. And often with my personal work, if I'm just drawing something for fun, I'm not overly concerned with that. But when you're designing something for a client, you have to be aware that, you know, you have to kind of avoid those pitfalls. And that's where the kind of the heavy mental lifting can come in with this stuff of like having to actually think about exactly what you're portraying on screen. Like for instance, this kind of whale tail spoiler is something I draw constantly, mostly because I'm a rabid Porsche fan, but also because it looks cool, I think. But I've kind of changed it up ever so slightly in this iteration and given it a bit of a completely nonsensical supercharger airbox right in the middle of it, because why the hell not? But again, it's just one of those things that I spend a lot of time looking at photos of cars and that kind of stuff, so you just kind of absorb that stuff by osmosis, and then you can kind of work it into your drawing. So again, this is one of those things that I have a much bigger visual library of like automotive parts and mechanical parts than I do like human anatomy. My human anatomy is not super amazing, but not many people pay me to draw characters, so there's a connection there.
And I always find it's kind of like what you're interested in as well, right? It's
absolutely,
like,
yeah.
You know, yeah.
Like I do like designing characters, but I don't have my workflow for that, and my mental process for that is not as good as my mental process for mechanical things. And so as something I do for a job, I'm much more comfortable working on the mechanical stuff, because I know that if someone asks me to design, you know, a vehicle that does XYZ, I can do that for them. That's fine. And, you know, this is my job, and so I want to have that confidence, because if I'm confident in doing it, it means other people will be confident in me doing it for them, which means, you know, you get hired. If you're not sure that you can do it, that is going to reflect in your work, and your designs will be a little bit unsure. So yeah, try not to force stuff on yourself just because you feel like you should be designing it. Just design the stuff you want to design, and then go find a way to get paid for that, right? Like how to, or go find a way to work that into your process. So it's like, oh, I really love designing cars. Okay, well then probably applying for a bunch of character design jobs is not what you should be doing. You should be going and finding companies that, you know, do racing games, or, you know, find a director who likes, you know, Fast and the Furious or whatever, and go and work for them instead. Because if you're just like, oh, I feel like I should design this because that's what everyone's doing, you're going to be putting yourself up against people who actually totally want to do that and want to do nothing but that 24/7, which is crazy. Because why would you want to compete with someone who's like just got the jump on you through their own kind of passion and that kind of stuff? Yeah, go and find the thing that relates to your passion, and you can do whatever you want. So again, I'm just going to try and draw like one single good circle and use it for everything.
So we've got a bit of a question about the school here. Just somebody asking, are the students from all around Australia, or most of them from Adelaide? Well, there's actually quite a lot of students from all over the place. We have students from even not just from Australia, from overseas and things like that as well. And yeah, there's quite a lot of students here from Melbourne and Sydney and Perth and Brisbane, from all over Australia. So it's awesome. So yeah, so I have no idea where you're from,
but you are more than welcome.
Yes, yep. There are plenty other people here that are not from Adelaide, so you won't be alone.
Oh, that is not the. What the hell did I just do?
Command Y, maybe, or like you, yeah.
How did I hit Y from all the way? Don't think my finger was anywhere near the Y key, but apparently it was.
It's interesting that when CMYK preview makes blue grey.
Color race. I told you it's all. It's gonna be fine. Yep. Oh, it could be set to dot gain. It's probably set to dot gain. Yeah, it is. So I'm just going to kind of line up all these cylinders and then erase like the areas that I don't need, but I'm just going to merge them all down first. So I get one big, actually, let's go one step back. Because this is a gun barrel, so we know it's going to be kind of straight, and I think I'll actually have to deviate slightly from my blue sketch underneath just to hit a little bit of this, but we'll see. Not too concerned about that because I kind of know what is going to happen in there. And then I'm going to draw the actual gun barrels straight over the top, and then that will give me a good clue as to what I can erase and what I can't erase.
It's cool. So for you guys watching, like Ned's using a lot of like shift click.
Oh yeah.
So it's basically drawing, and the way he's getting those straight lines by holding shift and then just clicking from one point to the next.
I'm just really good at drawing straight lines. No, not at all. I'm terrible at drawing straight lines. So yeah, if you want to if you click and then hit shift, you can see you get a bit of a kind of a gradient from like nothing to everything here. Generally the way I get past that is just doing it a couple of times. If I keep holding down shift and just go click, click, click. And because I have a brush that is set to have more than 0% opacity on like a minimum stroke, it will just continuously draw lines for me. So that's a bit of a technical thing that's a little bit hard to explain over a Twitch stream. But if you have a decent knowledge of kind of how Photoshop brushes work, that hopefully made a little bit of sense to you. And you can kind of go through that. But yeah, I use shift click all the time. I use it to draw curved lines as well, where I'll kind of just like go around like that and then kind of go back as well, just because I feel like it gives me a little bit of a kind of a weird aesthetic, but I kind of like it. Fits my style.
Yeah, so someone's just saying that they, thought that what we're teaching seems pretty unique around Australia, and I didn't mention Sydney. Yes, we have people from Sydney too, and yeah, the school is pretty unique.
We are, yeah. I think
the fact that you get all your classes are taught by working industry professionals, so that's the most unique thing, and that does happen elsewhere in some schools in the States and some in Europe and things like that, but it's pretty rare. So yeah, whenever you can get that opportunity, it's you should take a hold of it and make it happen.
Yeah, I guess that's definitely one thing all the instructors here try and do is like relate what we do back to exactly how this would go down in a professional environment, because there's no point in teaching you guys stuff that you're not going to use in a job. So we kind of tailor all of the courses towards that kind of approach, rather than, we still absolutely want you guys to be the best possible artists you can be, but we're doing it very much with designs on, having graduates out of here that kind of know what's up in terms of the industry and all that kind of stuff. Because believe it or not, that's what employers are looking for. I've got 9 minutes. This could be fun. We're getting there.
It's getting there. There's one big gun on the front.
It's a gun. It's a small spaceship on the back. That's what it is. Okay, so this is completely probably screwed up my perspective for this front fin, but whatever, we'll just wing it. Huh. That was a really funny joke. I apologize. You're never gonna have me on this.
Pun was intended.
You're never gonna have me on this Twitch stream again, are you?
I know you're the king of puns, Ned.
It's me. So close to getting that right. Now I'll never be able to get that line again.
Curved lines in Photoshop. The bane of everyone's existence.
Oh man, drawing things that are twisted are the bane of my existence. I'm so bad at figuring that stuff out. That's gonna go down there. And then it's gonna go. Technically it doesn't need to twist, but I want to twist it. I was doing so well with the twisted lines before, and now it's just all gone terribly wrong. Can we just cut to like one of those signal testing patterns or something?
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe I won't twist it. Or alternatively, I won't learn anything from any of my mistakes and I'll just keep trying to twist it. Tune in next time for 3 hours of an idiot who insists on drawing something a certain way that clearly isn't working.
The For 5 minutes, Ned.
Christ. Why does this always happen when I do demos?
That's how it goes.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's cool. I think some guy, everyone that's watching probably getting some really cool tips of how you can kind of do some line work and
not
stuff.
to do, yeah. Yeah, I think like where did I learn this? I can't remember. I saw someone wrote this on the internet, so it must be true. Of like, when it comes to drawing stuff like this, to just not, and this sounds really kind of blasé, but not to care too much about the final result, because especially in Photoshop, right? Because you can undo everything. You've got like layers. You can test things out. Oh, that's the smudge tool. You can test things out, and do all sorts. You can do whatever you want. And so, if you care too much about that final product, like obviously you want it to look good. I'm not saying don't care about what it looks like, but if something's not working, it's okay. Just like figure out a new way to do it, or try like a new way to do it, and it's it'll all be fine. Nothing's going to explode, and that way you get. I think this is one of the reasons why a lot of people lose gesture in their drawings is they worry so much about accuracy, and accuracy is important, but it's only important where it's actually servicing the design. If it's forcing your design to look dead or have no gesture or no emotion, then that accuracy is actually a hindrance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's falling down behind me. Don't be too precious about anything. If a line's not working, get rid of it. If you can't figure out why something's working, see if you can do it another way that still helps you complete the design to the standard that it needs to be completed. Especially with like concept art, right? Because again, nothing you do as concept art is going to make it onto the final. It's not going to make it onto the screen. You might make it into the art book, but it's nothing we do here is going to be a finished product. And so if you spend all of your time just like desperately trying to claw everything back into some horrendous world where everything is perfect, you're just going to make a very big dent in your head against the wall, which is no fun. So what's the point? But even if something is a little bit loose, if that sparks an idea in someone else's head, or even if it's enough to sell an idea to an art director, and then they go, okay, now can you please go off and finish that and make it work? Then you get a second bite at the cherry. But if there's like, if the one thing holding me back from finishing this drawing is the fact that I can't get that ammo belt to twist properly, and I just give up and go, okay, well then this spaceship's never going to exist, I guess. That is that's a real pity and a real waste of like all the rest of the effort that goes into the rest of the drawing. So if something's not working exactly how you intended, just make sure it works well enough for now, and then you can always go back and finish it. Hopefully. Am I back? Good. Sorry, my microphone just fell off the back of my chair. We need to invest in some better gaffer tape.
We need some more tape.
Some better tape.
Yeah. Please send us in some tape, guys.
Yeah, please. Taking donations. That's probably dangerous. You're going to end up with like 20 crates of duct tape now. Yeah, so what was I saying before I cut out? But yeah, like, just if something's not working, just figure out a way to make it work well enough, and then you can go back and refine it later. If it's, I'll probably redraw that ammo belt. I'll definitely redraw that ammo belt. But it's one of those things where, it's just a quick little drawing and that's all it needs to be. And so I'm not going to let the fact that I completely stuffed up that ammo belt just, destroy my belief in the drawing. I still like the design. I can always fix it. Not a big deal.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Not worth worrying about.
Yep. Yeah, I find that's a pretty cool tip, just in terms of like not letting things get you too much, kind of like just compartmentalizing things.
Yeah. And
just taking small bites in your painting. Like sometimes I think when students start, they always tend to like try and do crazy stuff.
Yep.
And it's not so much that you're just trying to do crazy paintings or drawings or whatever. It's the fact you're trying to get it all done once, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens is as you get like a bit more experience, you kind of learn how to just go like, okay, if I just get this bit and I just get this bit and I just get this, it's gonna like all come together.
Exactly.
But that takes a bit of like practice and just refining your process.
Yeah,
exactly. For those things.
It's not done until you say it's done. So if something is holding you back, then just figure out a way to fix it, or maybe a way to fix it, and try that. And if it works, awesome. If it doesn't, rinse and repeat. And it won't be the end of the world for sure. And and you will get it right eventually. Even if it means that you have to go, okay, well, this is definitely not working today. This is tomorrow's problem, or I'm going to go and ask someone who I think will probably know the answer to this question. Go and get some feedback. And most of the time, if you find like another artist or someone, an artist that you really like, if you're a student, go and a lot of artists make themselves available to give feedback in some way, shape, or form. Like you can't necessarily just kind of send someone an email and expect them to instantly reply back and say, oh yeah, this is how you fix that. But a lot of artists in some ways will make themselves available to give feedback and critiques and stuff like that, or even just your friends, because it's like one of those things where if you're just really scratching your head and going, oh, I just don't know how to fix this, what do I do? Even just showing it to one of your friends, they might say, oh, isn't that wrong? And you're like, oh yeah, it is. Sorry, I didn't realize that. I'll go fix that. And then job done. Alrighty. Yeah, I think we can probably leave that there for now. It's a dumb little minigun spaceship, but it'll do the job.
It's awesome, Ned. So thanks for coming on the stream.
Thank you for
and
having me.
Yeah, I think we're going to wrap it up there, guys. Thanks a lot. Glad to have caught you on the stream tonight. And yeah, please, if you got any comments for what you'd like kind of discussed and things, we're going to like try and set up some message board stuff so that we can get a bit more kind of like chatter happening during the week about what's going on and what we can do in the streams. And certainly stay tuned for some of the subscriber types of deals that we're going to kind of get happening. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We'll see you guys next week. All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.